Ever pondered why your parents just can't understand your love for avocado toast? Or why you can't fathom their obsession with fax machines? Ah, the age-old question of generational gaps. It's a tale as old as time, but today we're looking at two specific cohorts, Millennials and Gen X. Now if you're unsure about where you fall, don't worry. Let's clarify. If you were born between the early 80s and the mid-90s, you're a proud millennial. And if you were born from the mid-60s to the late 70s, you're a part of the Gen X club. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of it all. We all know millennials are often stereotyped as being obsessed with social media, selfies, and yes, that infamous avocado toast. They're the ones who brought you terms like FOMO and YOLO, and have a knack for turning anything into a hashtag. On the other hand, we have Generation X. This group is often seen as the forgotten generation, sandwiched between the boomers and millennials. But don't be fooled, they've got their quirks too. They're the ones who remember a time before the internet, who can tell you what it was like to wait for a dial-up connection, and who probably still have a cassette tape or two lurking in a drawer somewhere. But it's not all avocado toast and fax machines. These two generations have experienced some of the most transformative events in recent history. They've seen the rise and fall of economic booms, the evolution of technology, and the shift in societal norms. So, if you've ever wondered why your Gen X boss doesn't understand your need for a work-life balance, or why your millennial colleague seems to be on their phone all the time, you're in the right place. We're here to delve into the idiosyncrasies, the laughable moments, and the serious impacts that have shaped these two generations. So stick around as we dive deep into the abyss of generational gaps. Remember when your mom called you in a panic because the Internet Explorer was lost while you were busy trying to find Pikachu on Pokemon Go? Ah, technology, the great divider, and the great uniter. It's like a tug of war between Generation X and Millennials, each pulling in their own direction with their own strengths. Generation X, bless their hearts, were the pioneers who bravely ventured into the wild west of dial-up internet, floppy disks, and the first cell phones, the ones that were the size of a small suitcase and had the battery life of a mayfly. They were the first to experience the sheer terror of a computer virus, the frustration of a buffering video, and the mystery of the lost Internet Explorer icon. On the other side of the rope, we have the Millennials, born with a digital silver spoon in their mouths. They've never known a world without smartphones, social media, or streaming services. For them, life is a constant stream of Snapchat stories, Instagram posts, and tweets. They can order pizza, find a date, and watch a movie all without ever leaving their couch. But it's not just about the differences. Despite the gap in technological prowess, Gen X and Millennials are tied together by a common thread, the internet. Generation X may have been the ones to lay the groundwork, but it's the Millennials who have taken it to new heights. So next time your mom calls in a panic because she can't find her emails, or your dad is baffled by the latest iPhone update, remember, they were the trailblazers. They braved the uncharted territory of technology so that millennials could live in a world where information is at their fingertips. And let's not forget the humor in all of this. Because there's nothing quite as amusing as watching a Gen Xer trying to figure out Snapchat filters, or a millennial attempting to rewind a VHS. So, while millennials are busy swiping right, Gen X might still be wrestling with their VCR. Ever wondered why your dad can't comprehend your 5-day work week while you can't understand his undying loyalty to his first job? Well, here's a quick peek into the contrasting work ethics and career perceptions of Generation X and Millennials. Buckle up! Remember when Dad would tell stories about his first job, where he'd clock in more hours than there are in a day? That's typical Gen X for you, loyal to a fault. Picture them as those faithful canine companions, ever ready to fetch the proverbial work frisbee. And retirement? It's like that elusive bone they can't seem to find. In contrast, Millennials are more like curious cats, sniffing out new opportunities and not afraid to change lanes if it means a better work-life balance. They are the pioneers of the 5-day work week, flexible hours, and remote work. Because hey, who said you can't have a Zoom meeting while sipping a latte at your favorite cafe? Now let's talk side hustles. For Gen X, having a side hustle was often viewed as a sign of instability or lack of commitment. But for Millennials, a side hustle is a badge of honor, a testament to their ability to juggle different interests and income streams. After all, why put all your eggs in one corporate basket when you can diversify? But it's not all black and white. Gen X is loyal, yes, but they've also carved out a niche in the entrepreneurial world. They are the risk takers who started the dot-com revolution. And Millennials, while they champion work-life balance, are not afraid to burn the midnight oil when their passion project calls for it. So, the next time your dad gives you a puzzled look over your work schedule or your pursuit of multiple gigs, remember it's not about right or wrong, it's about different strokes for different folks. And that, folks, is why your dad thinks you're a part-time worker and you think he's a workaholic. So your mom participated in protests, and you fight for causes with hashtags. Same thing, right? Well, not quite, but let's dive into this interesting comparison between Generation X and Millennials. Back in the day, when Gen Xers saw a problem, they put on their tie-dye shirts, squeezed into their bell-bottom jeans, and hit the streets with handmade signs and catchy chants. They were the hippies, the activists, the protesters. They stood in solidarity, often for hours on end, battling the elements and sometimes even law enforcement, all for the causes they believed in. Now let's fast forward a few decades to the era of millennials. They see a problem, and what do? They take to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Hashtags become their banners, memes their protest signs, and retweets their chants. Instead of battling the elements, they battle trolls and keyboard warriors. Their protests may not be in the streets, but they are no less passionate or important. But let's not forget about the time when a millennial tried to start a hashtag campaign without knowing how hashtags worked, or the time when a Gen Xer showed up at a protest with a sign that said, "I don't get hashtags, but I'm still mad." It's all part of the charm of these two generations trying to navigate the world of activism in their own unique ways. Now, some might argue that hashtag activism is lazy or ineffective compared to old-school protesting. But let's not forget that hashtags can reach millions of people in an instant, spreading awareness and sparking discussions on a global scale. And let's not dismiss the tireless efforts of Gen Xers who paved the way for today's social movements. So we've got the hippies with their protests, and the hashtags with their digital campaigns. Different methods, same goal, change. It just goes to show that every generation has its own way of shaking things up and making a difference. So, no matter the methods, both generations are just trying to make the world a better place, one protest or hashtag at a time. So, we've laughed, we've compared, we've contrasted, but are Millennials and Gen X really that different? Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored so far. We've seen how technological advances have shaped the ways in which both Millennials and Gen X interact with the world. Millennials with their hashtags and side hustles thrive in the digital age, while Gen X, the workaholics of yesteryears, have had to adapt to the rapid pace of technological change. Yet, despite these differences, both generations share some common ground. They both value work-life balance, although they approach it in different ways. Gen X, with their typical 9-to-5 careers, strive for stability and security. On the other hand, Millennials, the champions of the gig economy, seek flexibility and independence. We also discussed how external events have influenced the worldviews of both generations. The economic uncertainty of the late 20th century, the rise of the internet, global terrorism, and climate change have all left indelible marks on the collective consciousness of both Millennials and Gen X. These experiences have shaped their perspectives, their aspirations, and their understanding of the world. Additionally, both generations share a desire for personal growth and fulfillment. They believe in the value of hard work, and they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. They're motivated, ambitious, and they're always looking for ways to improve themselves and their surroundings. So, despite the generational gap and their distinct characteristics, Millennials and Gen X have more in common than you might think. They're both products of their time, shaped by historical events and technological progress. They share similar values and ambitions, and they both face the challenges of the modern world with resilience and determination. In the end, whether it's avocado toast or a fax machine, we're all just trying to navigate this crazy world we live in. So here's to both Millennials and Gen X. Different, yet oh so similar.